So, and the last topic, we've already, I'm talking about 1.5 hours now. Sorry for that. I hope you're still here. Quickly, mastering chain. That's not the mastering chain I'm using now, because you see, it's already really old. But the main stuff is still the same. I've just switched out some stuff, and other stuff is still there. So for example, my concept of mastering is that I don't want to change the complete track. I will just make it better. So if I have to use a lot of EQ or something in mastering, that something is wrong in my mix. And that's my way to think about mastering. If you have problems in your track and you already notice them in your mastering, then why fix it in the mastering? Mastering is not there to fix problems. It depends. If you send it to an external master engineer, yeah, of course he has to fix problems, because that's just the way it is. No one will send an absolutely perfect mix down. But if you're mastering your tracks yourself, or at least you make a kind of basic mastering for your tracks, then if you notice some problem, why fix it in the mastering? You still have the project here. Go in the project and fix it in the mixer. Fix it where the problem really occurs at first place, and then you don't have to do much at mastering. Here you can see that the mastering chain looks pretty long. You think yeah, okay, what, you have so many plugins here, and what are you doing? My mastering approach is that I'm using a few plugins here, but every plugin is just doing very, very little. And what I want to achieve is that they will give them that overall track my personal sound. And if you listen to my tracks, that I have a kind of sound to them. Not saying that it's like the greatest and most unique sounds. I'm not talking about like the tracks itself, but sound wise, the sound stage and the mix down, the frequency spectrum is pretty much like consistent throughout my tracks. And that's also because I'm running all of this stuff through the same chain, or kind of the same chain, and then just tweak it for the individual tracks, and it gives it a kind of like cohesive sound. And that's also a way to get a more unique personal sound, which will people maybe notice. And let's just quickly one step back into the stereo bus. Here on the stereo bus, in this old project I have still the stereo bus. In my new project everything is on a master, but what is here are two plugins. It's virtual mix bus from Slate Digital and Casrock True Iron, and what they are doing is they're kind of, or the virtual mix rack here, the virtual mix bus is kind of emulating a console, an analog console. On analog consoles you have like groups and like your master mix bus where all the sounds are routed into. And these buses added some very smooth like saturation and glue to the overall tracks. And here we can see I've also selected the Brit 4K, which is an SSL console, and added some drive. And only it's like subtle, but I think it kind of like gives it like more, I don't know, like density, width, space. I don't know how to call it. Let's maybe just try it out, see if we can hear it. The volume is not completely perfectly matched, but it adds a slight, I think, more volume on top. But it like, I don't know, it kind of gives it a little bit more saturation and but also more space and depth. That's why I'm using it. And same with the Casrock True Iron. Really great plugin. It's like also emulating like saturation stages, and I really love that. And I'm mostly using this 108X. So like here you can see it is a family used vintage Muldrack tape machines on optical compressors. Here you can see there are different like parts where you can see where they're coming from, and I like the 108X a lot. The V178 is also cool, but mostly I'm ending up here. But you can try different, there of all like different flavors, and you can also use them on individual tracks. But I really like the sound. You can also go really heavily with this one. But here on master, on the mix bus here, I'm doing just a little to give it a little more of this characteristic sound. Then let's talk about mastering. My mastering approach is like I have different stages. First stage, saturation. Second stage, EQ and frequency balance. Also in between is some imaging, but it's kind of like only one step. And then I have some compression limiting at the end. Basically I have only I use the Shadow Hills compressor very slightly, but also not that much for the compression itself. I will just compress like 1 dB. But I use these plugins for the distinct sound, because I'm not using like digital or kind of only digital plugins. I kind of use more these like analog emulation plugins, because they have a different sound and they try to make the sound a little bit more imperfect, and that's what analog in the end is. And that's why I use these plugins, or that's why I have so many plugins in a row, because they will not add a lot, but they will add just their own flavor. And so here saturation, I'm using Fab Filter Saturn here. It's not perfectly volume matched, so it's hard to show right now, but I'm using over here a preset from my own 4-band tube and tape master. Usually I like tube in the low frequencies a little bit more, and on the mid-high frequencies I use tape saturation. Then I have my favorite virtual tape machines from Slate Digital, which I really love. Also gives a little bit more space depth to the whole mix, and add some saturation on top. Then I have my Black Box HG2, which is really cool. And I will add some additional saturation with this one. I've made a rack here where I can tweak all the settings without opening it. Then I have some here volume compensators, because this plugin is so fucking annoying, because it has no automatic volume compensation, and with distortion plugin this is really annoying, and I don't know why these companies don't fix that. I mean, all the limiters have this, and there are loads of plugins which have automatic volume compensation, and I think it's not that hard to implement it. And we need it, because if I tweak the setting and the volume will get up a lot, then I don't really hear if it's making a good change and it will add something to the sound, or if it will destroy it. Because if it's louder, we think it's better, and if it gets quieter, I will think it's worse, even if it's probably not. And that is really annoying. So sorry for the rant. But I really don't get it, why people are like putting out plugins for 100-200 euros and they don't have volume automatic volume compensation. So the way to go about it, there's a free plugin for Max for Live. It's called Compensator Send and here Compensator Receive. I don't know. I think it's both in one pack. For my guides for free. Really cool one. And he regularly also updates it. So basically, you put a send and receiver, and in between your plugin of choice, and then the compensator sender will send like the volume signal to the receiver, and so the receiver see, okay, how loud is the signal I am receiving, and how loud is the signal that the sender sends me, and then it will compensate and will try to match the volume level of the input into your plugin of choice. So what this basically does is, even if you tweak the settings, the signal will stay pretty much at the same volume, like plus minus a half dB or something. But that's close enough to get a feeling that what you are doing is right and not make the track worse. And that's what is really important. So I recommend it to really think about that. If you're using saturation and limiting clipping and stuff, make sure you listen at the same volume level when you're comparing it, because otherwise you will just cheat yourself. Then finally we have some imaging, and here important step, because I've not mentioned it in the very first part of the tutorial, where I told you about the kick rumble that I have always on my master, my imager, which will make the low frequencies mono anyway, so I will not have to do it on the individual channels because it will get made mono in the master anyway. And here I'm using make it mono around 180 hertz, and these steps are pretty smooth, so that the cuts are not very not so like hard. So you have to just solo it, listen to it, where is really the bass frequency parts and the like frequencies which should stay in the center. As I said, you don't have to really put it in mono completely. Important is it has to be mono compatible and not mono, right? But still I put it in mono because if you know a little bit about sound theory, you will know that low frequencies are always omnidirectional, so that they will spread out in all directions, and usually on a bigger speaker system you have like subwoofers, and usually the subwoofers always receive already a mono signal, not a stereo signal, but it depends, not on all. But so anyways, just to make sure that I already know how it will sound on a mono system, I will put it in mono here, and I will always, as I showed you, have my rack here, my monitor control rack, and while I'm producing I am using the mono button a lot to see how the sounds will translate in mono, because I have to make sure that every element will sound good in mono as well, because in some clubs still we have systems which are playing their stuff in mono, and that's why it's important that it still sounds decent in mono. Of course it will sound better in stereo, but it has to sound decent in mono. So, and that being said, if you look at the settings, you might think, oh wow, this guy is going crazy. He puts like 100% on the mid band and 80% on the high band. Yes, but very important, I already have this plugin enabled, not at these settings, but I have it enabled already while I'm producing, so I will compensate already for the sounds which will have too much width in the mixing, and that's why I can turn it up in the mastering a bit more, and the elements are in the right place. If you put like this plugin on your master of your track which is already made like the width is already there, and then you throw it up and here put 100%, it will completely mess it up. It will not work. You have to mix into the chain already, otherwise this setting would be insane. So don't just please don't copy it and think it will sound great. If you haven't compensated for that in your mixing stage, it will completely destroy everything. That being said, let's keep moving on with the EQ section. I use, which I really like, the Carl Baxter EQ, which is like emulation of the famous Dangerous Bex EQ. It's a Baxendale EQ, so basically has only a low shelf, high shelf, and nothing else. But the reason why I'm using it is basically not only for the EQ. I'm using a high shelf here, boosting a little bit the highs to make it a little bit more stand out. But the reason why I'm using it mainly is because of this preamp feature. I will enable the preamp, and what will happen is that the left signal is not exactly processed as the right signal also, and this kinds of make this analog sound because it gives a little bit more space and width to the overall mix, like kind of this 3D what people are talking about, and that's why I'm using it. And yeah, and it's free. You can go to the Acoustica Audio website, and only this Carl Baxter EQ, this a single unit, is free. You can get it, and if you want to try it out. And because I have compared it to the Plugin Alliance Bex EQ, and to be honest, I think the Carl Baxter is better. It especially if you listen to the stereo width or the width of the whole track, it's a lot better than the Plugin Alliance. And the Plugin Alliance is not for free, and the Carl Baxter is for free. So why should I buy it? Yeah, I will go with the Carl Baxter. Only downside is that the Acoustica Audio plugins use loads of CPU, but the EQ itself is not that bad actually. So then, yeah, just some very basic EQ. You can see just boosting the mid-range a little bit, just 1 dB and 1.5 dB cut here in the 100 Hertz area, because there was a little bit of mud, and low pass, basically low pass about 25-30-ish. To just remove the very low rumble, but usually there's not a lot going on there. Then I cut it at 18K because usually if it then afterwards gets compressed into MP3 anyways, these frequencies will be cut out anyway by the compression of the MP3 format, so I will cut it out here as well. And also important, because very high frequencies can be problematic with like oversampling, downsampling, all that stuff. I have videos about that, so if you are interested in that, you can watch it. Then I have my very old plugin, LinMB Waves Multiband Limiter. I really like that because I can make a final frequency response kind of, so I can balance just the different frequency spectrum a little bit. So you see that I had a little bit too much lows because we love low end, but it was too much, so I had to cut it. Then I will boost just a little bit the mid highs, and here you can see that I'm using no compression, no limiting on the high band, on very little here on the high band as well, and only more compression in the low mid, because I compress the low mids a little bit more to keep them pretty compact, because otherwise I feel that it makes your tracks muddy. But yeah, just try it out. Then Slate Digital FGX. This plugin has a lot of bugs, unfortunately. But now if I open it, it looks good. I have disabled everything, but if I toggle it on and off, sometimes it will just freak out and enable the other stages again, and it's really annoying, and why nobody fixes it. But anyway, what I'm using this for, and this is also the philosophy I already told you, I don't want to add to use plugins and add, like process it a lot in mastering. I will just make it a little bit better, and that's the way to go here. As well, I only use here these two settings and this one, and in this case only this one, and this is called dynamic perception. And what this does is it tries to increase the perceived dynamics of your track while still having like the same dynamic range, which kind of sounds like counterintuitive, because you think, okay, if you have no dynamic range, how it can sound dynamic? Well, actually, it is a little bit more complicated, and that's why it's called like dynamic perception, because the perceived dynamics are sometimes different than the actually measured dynamics, just if you look at the numbers. And that's important to understand if you want to have tracks which are mastered pretty loud but still sound kind of dynamic. Yeah, I know some people will say, yeah, it's not possible. If you smash it, it will sound very shitty and stuff. Well, yeah, at a certain point, yeah, I would agree. I would say, yeah, if you smash it to a like ridiculous number, but then still, in certain genres, it has its place. If you listen to hardstyle music, and if you have ever thrown like kind of analyzer plugin on a hardstyle master, you would think, what the fuck? Like, they have a dynamic range of 1 dB. And it's like RMS -1. It's like a sausage, but what the fuck? It still sounds like it sounds like it sounds. Yeah? It sounds like you would expect it, yeah? Because the genre is like that. And in other genres, if you have like a jazz song or a classic like piano song, no one would smash it into the limiter and push it that much, yeah? Because this genre is not meant to be pushed. But in certain genres it makes sense and others not, and that's why all this whole discussion, and with all the streaming platforms still we need some kind of loudness in our tracks, because otherwise they will sound weak and shitty, and we want heavy tracks which will punch you in the face. And that's why I use this plugin to enhance the perceived dynamics while still being loud. And that's the way I at least address this topic. Let's just quickly toggle these plugins on and off so we can see if they make a big difference or not. So yeah, and the last one I haven't talked about, of course, Guide Force. It's great. I love it. I've used it very slightly, only about 20 to 30%, but it will clean up your track a little bit. It's just kind of like magic, but what I really love that it's like kind of dynamic, and most of these like dynamic kind of dynamic EQs, you can set bands. Of course, I can set it in a fab filter, but I can only set it to one band. I have to put a lot, and the Guide Force just goes over the whole frequency band you have selected and tries to fix it a little bit. And it actually works pretty well. I mean, in some genres probably not, but in like these genres which have like this more like frequency response in like more electronic music genre, where you have like higher frequency response, or that the volume is higher than in like rock or like other genres. So, but it has changed as well. And anyways, it still works good, but you can hear that all these plugins didn't make a great difference, except the Linear B, because I have pushed down the lows nearly by 3 dB, and if you switch it off, you can clearly hear that there is too much bass, and too much bass is not good as well, because it will eat up all your headroom. And then next, I will use another one plugin to increase the dynamic perception, which is the newfangled punctuate. Only just a very little, but I don't use this setting anymore in my latest project. I use the newfangled elevate limiter because it has the punctuate stage in it as well, and then I can use it from there. I use more transient length and a little bit more emphasis. And next one, just the final like glue compression kind of stuff. Shadow Hills mastering compressor from Plugin Alliance, and why I really use it is not specifically for the compression. I use it for this stage here, hardware in or out. I will use hardware like the emulation on this mode here, steel. Here there are 3 modes, nickel, iron and steel, and I have tried it out, and it is subtle, but I have the feeling that the steel setting like kind of gives a little bit more weight to your low end. Yeah, I don't know, that's why I'm using it. Also, I'm using here the stereo mode with random channels, TMT mode, which is like kind of a technology where they model different channels on our analog console. And in the analog world, not every console channel has the same like response. Maybe one is like 0.1 dB louder, lower, and others like a little bit is like different in one frequency area. And what this kind of does is that it gives your track a little bit more depth, and the reason why is because the left channel and the right channel are processed a little tiny bit differently. And if you throw this plugin in a plugin analyzer and a plugin doctor, for example, this you can download it for free. You can check out the response, and you can see that the processing and the high pass, low pass and everything on the left and the right channel is not exactly the same if you use like different of these random channels. And that's why I use this to give the track this kind of like analog processing, and it does very little. So you can just see just half a dB, 1 dB, and I use no optical here. I use just a discrete, the slowest attack, 30 milliseconds, so that the transient get through a little bit, and then I will use a very low or a kind of low ratio 2:1, so that I will with like mixed bus compression or mastering compression, you really go with a more not that high ratio, because you like to glue everything a little bit more together, and that's why we go with a low ratio. You can even go 1.2 and then drive it a little bit more and just compress it a little bit together. But that was kind of it. Now we go into the final stage, which is clipping and limiting. Here I use also the newfangled audio clipper, and also in mid-side mode again, but in my latest project I also use more the standard clip, because it just like gives it a little bit more it's a little bit more aggressive, and I like it. Anyways, let's see how much we are clipping here, and the idea behind this concept is that first, before I go into my final limiters, I will go into the clipper, because the clipper will just cut off all the transients, because I don't want to limit transients. I will want to clip them, because limiting transients sounds bad. It makes the transients soft and muddy. I don't know. That's just how limiting works. I have made tutorials about that. You can check it out. So the idea is clip transients and limit overall, because clipping sounds not very pleasant if you clip for a very long time, and if you clip like sustained sounds, it can get problematic, to be honest. But if you like clip only very, very short, like below, I don't know, about maybe 10-30 milliseconds or something like that, you can just square it off and you will not hear the difference. So let's check it out. And you can hear, and this time you can hear it's still not perfect. The phrasing version, everything there is a little bit more complicated, but what I want to tell you is that listen to these kind of crackling sounds. And these crackling sounds, this is what gets added by the clipper. And you can hear that it's not really obvious, like these small like crackles, and in the whole context of the mix, it's very hard to hear it. So here the trick is only hit the transients, don't clip in the sustained sounds. And here you can see I'm sometimes having even 2 or 3 dB, and still sounds good, at least to my ears. Maybe you would disagree, but that's just my way. And then I have a pretty compact like mix mastering, pre-master stuff, and then I need to hit the final loudness target, which is in like my case, if I want to stand up to the famous guys, famous DJs, they will be around -6 dB, -6 laughs in the loudest or in the loudest part of your drop. Not overall, don't mess it up, just in the loudest part. And then you're ready to compete. Let's say you don't have to be, let's say, -6. You can also be at -7. It's still enough. But if you're lower than that, you're kind of like, if you're mixing track in a DJ set, there is a difference. Even if people don't want to, I don't know, they just don't want to be that true. They say, no, make the stuff more dynamic. Well, at some points, under certain conditions, I would say, that it's not completely false, but sometimes it's a kind of trade-off, and sometimes you need it, and that's why we're doing it. Anyways, that's the way I would do it for a like kind of beatport master. Let's check this quickly out in my favorite Brainworks meter. Okay, let's open it up. Let's see what it's doing. Here we add some little bit transient emphasis here, and see on the stereo independence, it's not doing the same on the stereo field. The downside is you can change the stereo field a little bit if you have them independent, but I want to be transparent, so that's why I'm using it. So you can see here also in the graphs, that is not limiting all the time. It just limits certain parts of the track where specific elements are playing, and they're adding up, and it will just clamp down on those parts to make the overall response a little bit more compact and flatter, and saves headroom for the very last limiting stage. And here I'm limiting around 2 dB, let's say, on the some parts 2.5 or 3 maximum, but you can see that's only on specific parts, and the rest is untouched. That's just the first part where I kind of prepared for the final limiting, and now we can go into the final limiting stage, which is my favorite limiter, or yeah, next to the elevate, my favorite limiter. And here we are just adding 2.5 dB. So here we will really push the whole signal completely together. I have the output set at minus 0.3 dB, and the reason for that is because if you afterwards compress it down to MP3, convert it to MP3, it will introduce a little bit of distortion, and just to compensate for that, we will use a little bit of headroom here, so that the final MP3 kind of uses the whole range, and that this added distortion, of course, will add up a little bit on top. Some people say, yeah, true limiting and true peak limiting. Well, my take on that is, as I said, short peaks can be clipped. So if you're having true peak limits just for like 3-5 consecutive samples, no one will hear it. That's the truth. No one wants to admit it. It is like that. Just try it out. Make like sample where you just clipping for a few consecutive samples. No one can hear it. It's impossible. And even mastering engineers, like if you think his name is Yoav Neve, I think, yeah, because he's the inventor of the Neve, very famous consoles, and he said, I think it's that like you can't hear clipping for like less than 20 or 25 consecutive samples, because it is so short that the human ear will not hear it. And it is like it is. And with true peaks, it's the same. True peaks are usually for very short parts of your tracks, and it's impossible to hear it. So I don't care. I would just use the output here at minus 0.3 to compensate a little bit for the additional distortion added when converting it to MP3. Then, yeah, I use oversampling, which is mapped here to my export mode. As you can see, if I turn it up, it goes up because oversampling is important. And I have already told you that in my oversampling video. Let's check it out if you don't know about it. But I have mapped it to this knob because oversampling takes up huge amount of CPU. And I don't want to have it during my mastering, because I have the whole project already here and my PC cannot handle it anymore. So I will use this export mode when I'm exporting. Then I will use the best settings, best oversampling with as little aliasing artifacts as possible. But during my mastering, I will have it off. Only while exporting, I will make sure I have the best sound possible. So let's see the last stage here. You can see it's clamping down in specific part of the tracks, especially when the leads are hitting. It's by pulling everything down to make it really tight and compact, and especially in these parts we're hitting the minus 6 target. In between we are like it's minus 6.5 or whatever. That's loud enough, and it still sounds kind of punchy and dynamic. Maybe some people will disagree. yeah, whatever. I think in certain genres you need a little bit of loudness, and especially for like DJs and DJ mixes, they will pump up the volume a lot and they will use only stuff like that. If you go to Beatport, please download 10 like tracks from the top 100 Beatport chart, techno chart, and analyze them. No, not a single one will be mastered more dynamically like you would think is possible. Like with Spotify and Streamfirst, they will always master it very loud. That's just the way it is. What can I say? If you want to compete, you have to, and if you want to have DJs play your stuff, there's only one way. Okay, that being said, I hope this was helpful. Unfortunately, it went a lot longer than I expected. I think I can make it in 1 hour. But anyways, I will hope that it was really in-depth and you can understand the process behind everything and how the sounds layer up, how the elements sound individually, how I try to achieve my overall sound, how I do my grouping, my processing, that I use good source samples, source sounds with less processing, because it will make your life easier and save you time. Yeah. I hope it was helpful. So if you like that kind of videos, make sure to subscribe. Please leave me a like. And if you want to have tutorials or these kind of how I made tutorials about a specific track, then just put it in the comments, send me a DM which track you want to see, and I can make a tutorial about it. Yeah. Because I don't know which are your favorite songs. I will just mostly use the like main track of my EPs and just break down this one. But often people are like different tracks, and so just let me know and I will do my best to help you. All right, that being said, thanks for staying with me for all that time. I wish you all a great day and see you soon in the next How I Made tutorial. Ciao and bye bye.